today we are going to be solving square root equations. The first 4 problems we are solving the equations by graphing. So if you were absent yesterday, we can get you kind of caught up with the graphing from yesterday. Now what we're going to do, we're going to graph the left side separate from the right side. So if you look at the left side, I see a square root symbol. And yesterday when we graphed those square roots, what did it look like? It looks like a curve. It's going to look curved like this. And when you graph the left side, it's going to be a curve. It's not going to be straight. It's going to be a curve. Now, on the right side, when you graph what's on the right side, it's a constant. So your constant is just going to be a horizontal line. So you're going to have 2 things on your graph, one curve, one horizontal line. So if I look at the left side, I have square root of x. The square root of x is a parent function. So looking at this part of the equation, does this graph move left or right? No. Does it move up or down? No. So it's going to start at the origin. And remember, to get your points on the curve, you use perfect squares. So the first perfect square is 1. And what's the square root of 1? So over 1, up 1. After 1, what's the next perfect square? 4. So go to the right 4. Square root of 4 is 2, so over 4, up 2. After 4, the next perfect square would be 9, and the square root of 9 is 3. So write 9, up 3. I need you to focus for me. So that's the left side. Your left side will look like a curve. Now when you graph the right side, it's going to be a horizontal line. So I need to draw a horizontal line through the 2. Now when you're solving these, you're looking for where does the curve and the horizontal line intersect. So I'm going to put that in red. They intersect right here. But today we're actually solving an equation. So when you're solving equations, what are you solving for? Yeah, you're solving for x. So your answer just needs to be the x value where they intersect. So if you look at the point where they intersect, the x value is 4. So that's your answer. X equals 4. So where does the curve intersect the horizontal line? And your answer is just the x value only. Now next one, problem 2. Again, graph the left side using your transformations from yesterday. So looking at the left side, actually I want to put this in blue. Looking at the left side, what does the 2 out front make the graph do? Stretch. It stretches by a factor of 2. And what does the minus 1 under the square root symbol make it do? Right 1. So instead of starting at the origin, we need to move to the right 1. Now for the first point, the first perfect square is 1. So if I move over 1, what's the square root of 1? Multiply it by the 2 out front, you get 2. So over 1, up 2. If there's a number out front, it's a multiplier, because this means 2 times that square root, so you multiply it. After 1, what's the next perfect square? 4. So from our initial point, move to the right 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. What's the square root of 4? 2. Multiply it by the 2 out front, you get 4. Do I have enough room to go up 4? 1, 2, 3. No, I don't. I'm going to go ahead and put it up here, because otherwise, can I really make a curve with just 2 points? No. So that's why I want to go ahead and add that third point up there. Now I can kind of see that it does need a curve upward. Yeah, my pen is not keeping up. Okay, that's better. Now for the horizontal line, that's going to be this 2. So I'm going to draw my horizontal line at positive 2. And you're looking for the point where they intersect. Yeah, so they intersect right here. And when you're solving for the variable x. So your answer should be x equals 2. So x equals 2 is the solution. Okay, number 3. First thing we need to do is graph the square root curve first. What does the plus 1 make it do? You would think it would move it to the right one, but it moves it to the left one. Now use your perfect squares. What's the first perfect square? Square root of 1. So over 1, up 1. After 1, what's the next perfect square? What's the square root of 4? So over 4, up 2. After 4, what's the next perfect square? 9, square root of 9 is 3. And connect those points for your square root curve. And when you graph the right side, it's going to be a horizontal line. So what number do I draw my horizontal line through? -2. Now when we're solving these, what is it we're looking for? Where they intersect. So where does that blue curve intersect that green horizontal line? Nowhere, so the solution would be no solution. Okay, I want you to do problem 4. Graph the square root curve, graph your horizontal line, and determine the solution. Now for number 4, make sure for your square root curve you graph all the transformations that are on the left side of that equal sign. So everything I circled in blue needs to be part of the transformations for that square root curve. Okay, number 4. What does the +2 make the graph do? Left 2. And what does the -3 at the back make it do? Down 3. So your initial point should have been at -2, -3. Use your perfect squares. What's the first perfect square? 1, square root of 1, over 1, up 1. Next perfect square. So move to the right 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Square root of 4 is 2. After 4, the next perfect square is 9. Square root of 9 is 3. So right 9, up 3. Connect those 4 points. And when I draw the horizontal line, it goes through which value? -1. And when we're looking for the solution, what is it we're looking for? Where they intersect. So they intersect right here, and we're solving for what variable? X. So the answer is x equals 2. Now it's not always going to be x equals 2. That's just a coincidence. Now on the back, now we are going to be solving these algebraically. So we're not going to be graphing these anymore. We're going to solve these square root equations algebraically. Now, where is the variable x? It's under the what? Square root. So in order to get the x by itself, we have to get rid of the square root. So we have to do an inverse operation to get rid of the square root. So what is the opposite of square rooting a number? Squaring it. So what we need to do in order to get rid of the square root, we need to square it. And whatever you do to the left side, you have to do to the right side. So if you square the left side, you have to square the right side. That's the most common mistake, is people forget to square the right side also. So both sides get squared. Now, Before we actually solve anything, I want to just show you what's going to happen here when I square a square root. So first, I want somebody to give me their favorite number. 7's what I heard first. We're going to do 14 next. So let's see what happens to the square root of 7 when I square it. What did I get? 7. Now somebody else said their favorite number is 14. So if I take the square root of 14 and square it, what did I get? 14. I want one more favorite number. 12. Oops. Well, yeah, let's do a big number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, if I square that, what do you think the answer would be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what happens when you square a square root? It just erases the square root sign, right? It cancels the square root sign, exactly. So that was the whole point of seeing that. So when you square a square root, it just gets rid of that square root symbol. So let's go back and finish this. So when I square the square root, it's just going to get rid of the square root symbol. So the answer is just what's underneath, which is 2x minus 3. Now the right side, it does need to be squared also. So 4 squared is 16. Now solve for x. What would I do next? Add 3 to both sides. Negative 3, positive 3 is my 0 pair, and 16 plus 3 is 19. Divide both sides by 2. We get x equals, you can leave it improper as 19 over 2. Or if you want to write it as a decimal, what's 19 divided by 2? 8.5. Yeah, 9.5, that's right. Now, with square root equations, you really need to check your answers. So if I put the 19 over 2 right here, the 2's would cancel, and that would just give me 19. And what's 19 minus 3? 16. What's the square root of 16? 4. So that is the correct answer. So you can always go back and check your work by substituting back into the original equation. So that's the right answer. Next one, number 6. Now, first I have to ask you, is the square root by itself? No. So that's the first thing you need to do, is get the square root by itself. And how would I get the square root by itself? Subtract 4 to both sides. So that gives me the square root of x plus 2 equals, what's 3 minus 4? Negative 1. 3 minus 4, negative 1. Well, this is telling me that when I take the square root, it equals negative 1. But if I look back here, when I took square roots, what did I get? Are these negatives? Yeah, this would be no solution. Just like when, if this were the absolute value of x plus 2 equals negative 1. That was no solution, because what did absolute value mean? Yeah, distance from 0. So can distance be negative? No, so it's kind of a similar situation here. If your square root is by itself and it equals a negative, your answer is going to be no solution. So if you want to make yourself a note, just put your square root equals a negative. That means your answer will be no solution. So if the square root equals a negative, your answer is going to be no solution. Keep that in mind when you're doing your assignment today. I know there's at least 2 that are no solution. So don't do a bunch of work and then you didn't even have to do any work at all. Okay, next one, number 7. Now, the first thing I need to ask you, is the square root by itself? Yeah, technically it's by itself. So what I need to do is get rid of the square root. So if x is under the square root, we have to get rid of that square root symbol. So what's the opposite of square rooting? Square. So if I square the left side, I also need to square the right side. And what happens when I square a square root? It gets rid of the square root. Just bring down what's under it. So bring down the 5x minus 9. Bring down the 2x minus 3. Now, if x's are on both sides, we normally move the smaller one. So which one should I move? The 2x. So if it's a positive 2x, I need to minus the 2x to both sides. Make sure you line up an x under an x. And 5x minus 2x is, so 3x minus 9 equals negative 3. What's next? Add 9 to both sides. So that gives us 3x equals 6. Divide both sides by 3. And the answer is what? X equals 2. Now, you can always go back and check your answers. If I put a 2 right here, what is 5 times 2? What's 10 minus 9? And the square root of 1? 1. So on the left side, I got a 1. Now, if I put the 2 over here, what's 2 times 2? And 4 minus 3. And the square root of 1? 1. So we got the same answer for both sides. So x equals 2 is the correct answer. So you can check every single answer today. Next one, number 8. I want you to do number 8. We'll check your answers in a minute. So you do problem 8. Solve for x. Number 8, where is the x? On both sides, but what is it under? Square root. So what's the opposite of square rooting? Squaring. So I need to square the left side. And if you square the left side, you also have to square the right side. And what happens when you square a square root? It cancels. So bring down what's under it. So bring down the 3x minus 1. And bring down the x. Now, x is on both sides. Normally, we move the smaller x, right? Is that what you did? No, because it's probably more work. Here, it's actually faster if you move the larger one. So if it's a positive 3x, subtract 3x, subtract 3x. So there's a 0 pair. Bring down your negative 1. What is 1x minus 3x? Negative 2x. Divide both sides by negative 2. And a negative divided by a negative becomes positive 1/2. You can leave it as a fraction or a decimal. But go back and check your work. So 3 times 1/2, or what's half of 3? 1.5, and what's 1.5 minus 1? So over here, I get square root of 0.5. Over here, if I put the 1/2, well, that's just the square root of 0.5, so both of these are equal. So 1/2 is the correct answer. Next one, number 9. Number 9 is slightly different. How is number 9 just a little bit different? It has the 3 out front, but we're going to do the same process. It's going to be very similar. But where is x? Under the square root. So I need to get rid of the square root. So what's the opposite of square rooting? Squaring. So we need to square the left side, square the right side. What happens when I square a square root? It cancels, so bring down the 8x plus 6. Now over here, is the 3 under the square root? No, it's out front. So what needs to happen is the 3 needs to be squared by itself. So what is 3 squared? 9. So we're going to have a 9 out front. But what happens to the square root when I square it? It cancels, so I just have the x. So the square root sign went away, and 3 squared gave us 9. No, because if you have 3 square root of x, that actually means 3 times the square root of x. Just like if you had a 3x, it's understood to mean it's multiplication between the two. If there's not a symbol in between the two, we all automatically assume it's multiplication, not addition. So now we have to solve for x. What would I do? Subtract 8x to both sides. So bring down the 6, and 9x minus 8x would be 1x. So the answer is just 6. Now make sure you check your work. If I put a 6 right here, what's 8 times 6? 48. What's 48 plus 6? 48 plus 6. 54. So on the left side, I got square root of 54. But on the right side, it's 3 square root of 6. Are those equal? Do you know? No. So what I would do if I were you, I would check in the calculator. So type in square root of 54. And the other side was 3 square root of 6. Yeah. So was 6 the right answer? Yes. So it didn't look like these were the same, but they are. So if you're not sure, just type it in the calculator just to double check. So 6 is the correct answer. And the last one, problem 10. Number 10. Where is x? Under the square root. So how do I get rid of the square root? Yes, square it. So square the left side, square the right side. Now, what happens with the number out front? It needs to be squared. So what is 2 squared? 4. And what happens when I square this square root? The square root goes away, so you just bring down the 2x plus 1. But what do you think I need to do there? Parentheses. Whatever was inside the radical, you need to put parentheses around it, because what will we have to do with that 4? Distribute it. So we'll have to do the same process on the right side. That 3 needs to be squared. So what is 3 squared? 9, and then put your parentheses, and when you square the square root, we need to bring down the x minus 1. So now we're ready to distribute. So distribute the 4 on the left side. So what is 4 times 2x? So 8x plus 4 is equal to 9x minus 9. What do we do next? Minus 8x to both sides. So 4 equals x minus 9. And what's next? Plus 9 to both sides. And 4 plus 9? 13. Now make sure you check your answers. If I put a 13 here, what's 2 times 13? 26. What's 26 plus 1? So we get 2 square root of 27 for the left side. Over here, if I put a 13, what's 13 minus 1? 12. So that gives me 3 square root of 12. Do those look the same? No, but check it in the calculator. So the first one was 2 square root of 27. What was the other one? 3 square root of 12? You think? Are these the same? Yes. So was 13 the correct answer? Yes, it was. 13 is the correct answer.